Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to objectively examine a highly specialized and honestly quite fascinating alternative legal framework regarding historical status correction. Our entire focus will be on distilling exactly what is outlined purely within our provided source documents. It's a complex topic with its own unique vocabulary, and we're going to unpack it step by step. Understanding this framework offers a really interesting lens into how some challenge the very foundations of modern government. Here's our agenda for today. We'll define expatriation, contrast nationality versus citizenship, and examine allegiance. Then we'll cover rights and responsibilities, walk right through the actual status correction process, and wrap it all up with a summary. Section 1. What is expatriation? Reclaiming standing. So, the entire framework we're exploring today is really built on this one core idea, that Americans must consciously expatriate from what the documents describe as a presumed corporate system. But what does that actually mean? Well, according to our source text, expatriation is defined specifically as the act of declaring your removal from the presumption of British territorial citizenship. The authors assert that over 35,000 Americans have supposedly used the Expatriation Act of 1868 to correct their public record status. Now, why 1868? To understand the historical authority the framework's adherents claim for their actions, we can look directly at the Expatriation Act itself. Section 1 literally states, any declaration, instruction, opinion, order, or decision of any officers of this government which denies, restricts, impairs, or questions the right of expatriation is hereby declared inconsistent with the fundamental principles of this government. So the crucial point is that the sources use this specific 1868 text as their absolute legal bedrock. Moving on to Section 2, nationality versus citizenship, deconstructing the system. To really deconstruct this system, the text draws a massive and perhaps surprising distinction between a national and a citizen. On one side, we have state nationals. These folks are described as people of the soil who receive an inherited birthright directly from their individual state, like being a Texan or a New Yorker. On the other side, we have U.S. citizens, and the documents don't categorize this as a nationality at all, but rather as British territorial subjects. The theory claims that the 14th Amendment allegedly tricked people into a municipal United States citizenship. Which brings us to a rather startling claim about how this supposedly happens. The framework argues that standard birth registrations actually enter babies into an unconscionable contract entirely without their knowledge. Because of this early paperwork, the text asserts that the individual is misidentified as a foreigner in their own country, and get this, their name is copyrighted, essentially making them the property of the British Crown Corporation. So the text breaks all of this down into 5 distinct political statuses, starting right at the top with state nationals on the soil jurisdiction and state citizens on the land jurisdiction. Below that, the framework lists 3 corporate statuses: the federal United States citizen, the territorial U.S. citizen operating under water jurisdiction, and finally, the municipal citizen of the United States operating in air jurisdiction. And the text actually describes that last one as a papist theocracy. Emphasizing the preferred status within this framework, we look at the state nationals. These are considered the true living people of the Union. The source text refers to them as the jus soli, people of the soil. According to the documents, these individuals owe no inherent allegiance to a corporate empire. Their only real job? Just keep the peace and obey public law. All right, Section 3, understanding allegiance, the ties that bind. This whole concept of loyalty taps right into the founders' belief that no one can serve 2 masters. And the documents make a pretty bold assertion here, that generations of Americans have unknowingly pledged their allegiance to a foreign power. How? Well, the text claims this happens simply by pledging to the federal war flag and accepting that territorial citizenship we discussed earlier. The sources state that this effectively, yet unknowingly, ties U.S. citizens directly to the British monarch. The documents go even further into our daily lives, listing specific professional licenses that supposedly trap individuals into divided allegiances. According to the text, if you hold a bar association membership and use the title Esquire, or if you hold a medical license, a real estate license, a commercial driver's license, or a federal insurance license, well, you've formed an allegiance with either the British, territorial, or papist municipal governments, and that, they say, prevents you from acting as a true state citizen. Let's head into Section 4, Rights and Responsibilities, Acting in Capacity. So let's say someone goes ahead and corrects their status. What are they actually responsible for now? Well, the framework differentiates clearly between a national and a citizen. A state national holds a passive responsibility. They simply obey public law and keep the peace. But a state citizen, they take on active government-forming duties. They are the ones who enforce the constitutions and sit as members of the International Business Assembly to sign international contracts on behalf of the state. A highly practical application of these statuses comes down to land ownership. The documents claim that presumed U.S. citizens don't actually own their land. They only hold British titles to the property in trust. To achieve true land ownership, the text insists you absolutely must correct your political status and trace the chain of title all the way back to the original land patent. Which brings us to Section 5, the status correction process, the mechanics of remedy. So how do adherents actually execute this theory in public records? Here is Phase 1 of the status correction process map, exactly as outlined in the sources. Step 1 is to sever the commercial link and presumption of status. Step 2 requires filing a foundational affidavit called a declaration of provenance. Step 3 is filing a deed of reconveyance to reclaim your all-caps trade name from the presumed federal registry. Finally, Step 4 requires recording all these documents at the nearest land recording office to provide public notice and permanently domicile on the land and soil jurisdiction. The real kicker here is the historical legal precedent the source texts cite to legitimize these public record filings. They rely heavily on the authority of the original 1860 constitutions and the 1793 Supreme Court case Chisholm v. Georgia, which deals with sovereignty. By filing these documents, the text claims adherents are even reclaiming ancient estates, such as the Kingdom of Armorica. And finally, Section 6, Summary, Reclaiming the Estate. Okay, we've covered a vast amount of specialized information today. Let's concisely reiterate the three main pillars found purely within our source text. First, the framework asserts that birth registrations create a presumption of foreign corporate contracts. Second, it claims true state nationality is fundamentally different from 14th Amendment municipal citizenship. And third, it provides a procedural remedy, stating that status correction physically severs these corporate ties via specific public record filings. We're going to leave you with this thought. Based purely on the source documents we've explored today, how does this framework challenge your everyday understanding of citizenship and allegiance? It certainly presents a stark contrast to conventional views of government and identity. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope it helped you understand the mechanics of this totally unique legal theory.